"Can we eat with you?" the little twin girls asked. The single dad's heart broke hearing their words. It was a rainy evening, the kind of night where the clouds seemed to hang low over the city, and the streets glistened under the dim glow of streetlights. Puddles formed along the sidewalks, and every now and then a car would splash through, sending arcs of water onto the wet asphalt. Inside a small, warm diner, the smell of fried food, fresh coffee, and baked bread filled the air. The sound of quiet chatter mixed with the soft hum of a jukebox, playing gentle songs from decades past. David sat alone at a corner table, the warm light of a small lamp casting a soft glow over his face. He stirred his coffee absent-mindedly, staring at the surface as if he could find answers in the dark liquid. Work had been long and exhausting that day. Being a single father was never easy, and some days felt heavier than others. He had 2 young children at home, and balancing his job, bills, and their needs often left him drained. Yet he tried to keep a smile on his face for their sake, even if inside he was tired. The diner was familiar to him. He had been coming here for years, sometimes with his wife, sometimes alone, and sometimes just to find a quiet moment away from the chaos of life. The booths were cozy, with soft, worn-out seats and small lamps on each table that made the place feel like a little sanctuary. Outside, the rain fell harder, tapping gently against the windows, and the smell of wet earth mixed with the aroma of food inside. David's mind wandered as he took a sip of his coffee. He thought about the day ahead for his children, school projects, homework, bedtime routines. He wondered if he was doing enough for them, if he was being the father they needed. His wife had passed away 2 years ago, and although time had softened some of the sharp pain, the emptiness she left behind was still there, quietly pressing against his heart. He shook his head slightly, trying to push away the melancholy. That's when he noticed them. At first, he thought he was imagining things, but no, there they were, 2 little girls, twins, holding hands tightly as they stood near the entrance of the diner. They were small, probably around 7 years old, with delicate faces and big, curious eyes. Their clothes were clean but slightly worn, and their shoes were a little too big for their feet, as if they had been passed down from someone else. Their hair was neatly combed, but a few strands had escaped, sticking to their damp foreheads from the rain outside. The twins looked around nervously. Their eyes flitted from table to table, as if they were searching for someone familiar, someone who would welcome them. They hesitated at the doorway, unsure whether to step inside or turn back into the wet streets. David watched them, feeling a tug in his chest that he couldn't quite explain. There was something in their small, cautious movements, the way they clutched each other's hands, that made his heart ache. For a few moments, the diner seemed to fade away. All David could see were those 2 little girls, standing in the rain, looking for warmth and safety. He felt a lump in his throat, a mixture of sympathy, concern, and something deeper, a sudden awareness of how fragile life could be for children. He remembered his own children at that age, laughing and playing, and he thought about how lucky they were to have a home, food on the table, and a father who tried his best every day. The girls finally stepped forward hesitantly, their shoes squeaking slightly on the wet floor. David noticed their small hands, pale and cold, and the way their eyes seemed to ask a question without words. They approached his table slowly, as if afraid he might say no. One of the twins, the one with a small bow in her hair, cleared her throat softly and spoke in a tiny, timid voice. "Can we eat with you?" David's heart broke at that moment. The words were simple, almost casual, but they carried so much weight. They didn't just want food. They wanted kindness, warmth, and perhaps a little comfort in a world that seemed too big and too scary for them. His mind raced. He wanted to ask where their parents were, if they were okay, if someone was looking for them. But he could see in their eyes that what they needed most in that moment was someone who would say yes. Without a second thought, David smiled warmly, trying to make his expression as gentle and reassuring as possible. "Of course," he said softly. "Come sit. You're welcome here." The twins' faces lit up instantly, a mixture of relief and happiness that made David's heart swell. They carefully climbed onto the seats across from him, their small hands folding in their laps. David noticed how they still glanced around nervously, as if they couldn't fully believe someone would let them sit, someone would care. He reached out and lightly touched their hands in a gesture of comfort. For a few moments, none of them spoke. The only sounds were the rain tapping against the windows and the soft background music playing in the diner. David felt a strange connection with the girls, a silent understanding that in that moment they were not alone. He glanced at them, studying their faces, the slight smudge of dirt on one twin's cheek, the way the other kept her fingers intertwined nervously, the small scar on her knuckle that hinted at past tumbles. Each detail told a story, and David felt a surge of protectiveness he hadn't felt in a long time. Finally, one of the twins spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you," she said. We didn't know if anyone would let us." David's throat tightened. He shook his head gently. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "You're welcome here. Everyone deserves to eat, and everyone deserves kindness." The girls smiled, a small, shy smile that slowly grew as they relaxed in his presence. David signaled the waiter and ordered 2 small meals for the twins, careful to choose something simple and warm: chicken noodle soup, a side of bread, and hot cocoa. As he waited, he made small talk with them, asking their names, about school, and about their favorite things. They answered softly at first, then gradually opened up, sharing little stories about their day, their favorite colors, and their love for drawing. David listened intently, occasionally laughing softly at their innocent jokes. He realized that for these girls, this simple meal was more than food. It was a moment of security, a feeling that someone cared. And in that moment, he felt a sense of purpose, a reminder that even small acts of kindness could have a profound impact. As the food arrived, the twins' eyes sparkled. They ate quickly but politely, savoring each bite as if it were a precious gift. David watched them, silently promising himself that he would do whatever he could to help them, even if it was just this small gesture for now. The rain outside continued to fall, but inside the diner, the warmth of the lights, the food, and the shared human connection made the cold evening feel a little brighter. By the time they finished eating, David felt a strange mixture of sadness and hope. He didn't know where the girls lived or what challenges they faced, but he knew that for a few hours they were safe, and they were seen. And in that brief encounter, he remembered the importance of kindness, of opening one's heart to others, and of the small miracles that could happen when someone simply said yes. As they got up to leave, the twins looked at David with gratitude shining in their eyes. "Thank you," they said again, more confidently this time. "We won't forget this." David smiled, his heart full, and nodded. "Neither will I," he whispered to himself, watching them disappear into the rainy night. Sitting back in his chair, David realized that sometimes life had a way of reminding us what truly mattered, not the deadlines, the bills, or the worries, but the small human connections that could change someone's day or even their life forever. And on that rainy evening, a small diner had become a place of warmth, hope, and unexpected friendship. After that rainy evening at the diner, David couldn't stop thinking about the little twin girls. Their small faces, wide eyes, and timid voices had left a mark on his heart. Even as he walked home through the puddled streets, the memory of their question, "Can we eat with you?" echoed in his mind. He had been alone in the diner that night, surrounded by the warmth of food and light. But now, walking through the empty sidewalks, he realized how lonely the girls must feel in a world that was so big and often unkind. At home, David's own children, Emma and Lucas, were waiting. They were 8 and 6, full of energy and curiosity, and excitedly told him about their day at school as he prepared dinner. David smiled at them, ruffling their hair and laughing at their small jokes. But even amidst the noise and warmth of his home, his thoughts kept drifting back to the twins. Something about them tugged at him, something he couldn't ignore. After putting the kids to bed, he sat alone at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring at the ceiling. Questions ran through his mind. Who were these girls? Why were they alone in the rain? Did they have a home? Were they safe? He realized that, while he had provided for his own children, there were so many children in the world who didn't have the same security, the same love, the same safety. And for some reason, that thought made his chest ache. The next morning, David couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to do something more. He started by thinking practically. He remembered the diner and the way the girls had seemed hesitant at first. They didn't just need food. They needed someone to care, someone who would listen and help them feel safe. He knew he couldn't take them home, not without knowing more, but he could find out who they were and if there were ways to support them. During his lunch break at work, David searched for local social services and organizations that helped children in need. He read stories of children who were lost, abandoned, or living in difficult situations. His heart ached as he read about the struggles many kids faced every day. He realized that while he had felt powerless when he first saw the girls, there were resources available that could make a real difference. That afternoon, after work, David returned to the diner. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet, glistening under the fading sunlight. He hoped the twins might be there again, but the tables were empty and there was no sign of them. He asked the diner staff if they had seen the girls again. The waitress shook her head, telling him that they hadn't come back. David felt a pang of worry. He hoped they were safe, that they had found warmth and a meal somewhere else, but he couldn't help thinking that they might still be struggling. Days passed, and the memory of the twins never left David. He shared the story with a close friend over coffee, someone he trusted and who had a big heart for children. His friend encouraged him to take action, to reach out to social services or local charities, and not just let the moment pass. David nodded, realizing that the right thing to do was not just to feel pity or sadness, but to help in a real way. That evening, David took a deep breath and called a local child support organization. A kind woman answered the phone, listening patiently as he explained what had happened at the diner. She asked him for the details he remembered, the girls' approximate age, the description of their clothing, the diner where they had been seen. David gave all the information he could. She reassured him that they would look into the matter and try to locate the children, ensuring they had food, shelter, and safety. While speaking to her, David felt a mix of relief and nervousness. He was relieved that there were people who could help, but he was nervous because he didn't know what would happen to the girls. Would they be taken to a temporary home? Would they be safe? Would they feel scared or alone again? He realized that while he had offered them a small moment of warmth, the real help needed to be bigger and more permanent. Over the next few days, David continued his routine work, caring for his children, managing household chores, but he also kept thinking about the twins. Every time he walked past a schoolyard or a playground, he imagined them playing, laughing, and being safe. He started noticing other children around him, seeing their needs more clearly, realizing how much a small act of kindness could matter. One Saturday, David decided to visit the diner again. The weather was sunny, and the city felt different without the rain, but his hope that he might see the girls again remained strong. As he entered, he ordered a coffee and sat at the same corner table where he had first met them. He watched the entrance nervously, scanning the doorway for two small figures holding hands. Time passed, and the diner filled with people, yet there was still no sign of the twins. David felt a small wave of disappointment, but he reminded himself that the important thing was that he had tried to help. He could not control everything, but he could do what he could. As he sat there, he noticed a group of children sitting at another table with their parents, laughing and eating together. He watched them for a moment, feeling a mix of happiness and sadness. He was happy that these children were safe, but sad because he didn't know if the twins were. The waitress approached him with a warm smile, noticing his thoughtful expression. "Are you waiting for someone?" she asked gently. David nodded slightly, not sure how much to explain. He told her about the twins, about how they had asked to eat with him and how worried he was about them. The waitress listened, her expression softening. "That's very kind of you," she said. "I hope they are safe too. Sometimes the city can be rough on little ones." David thanked her and returned to watching the entrance. He realized that his concern for these girls had grown into something deeper. It wasn't just curiosity or temporary worry. It was a genuine desire to help, to make sure they had the care they needed. He thought about his own children, the safety and love he could provide, and how fortunate he was. The contrast made him even more determined to do something meaningful. That evening, after returning home, David sat with Emma and Lucas and told them a simplified version of the story. He spoke carefully, wanting to teach them a lesson in kindness without frightening them. "Sometimes," he said, "there are children who need a little help. Even a small act like sharing your meal or saying kind words can make a big difference in someone's life." Emma and Lucas listened quietly, their eyes wide. They asked questions about the girls and what could be done to help them. David explained gently that he had contacted people who could make sure the girls were safe, but that even caring about others was important. As the children went to bed that night, David sat alone, reflecting on the power of empathy. He realized that the world could feel overwhelming, and life could be difficult, especially for children without support. But he also realized that small actions, listening, helping, showing kindness, could create ripples that might change lives. The next week, David received a call from the child support organization. They had located the twins. The staff told him that the girls had been living with a relative temporarily, but were facing difficulties there. They would be placed in a safe and stable environment while their situation was assessed. The relief that washed over David was immense. The girls were safe, and his small act at the diner had become part of a larger story of care and support. Even after the call, David's thoughts continued to linger on the twins. He wondered about their feelings, their fears, and their dreams. He realized that children like them carried heavy burdens silently, and that life was often more challenging than adults realized. But he also felt hope that people could make a difference, that kindness mattered, and that he had been part of that difference, even in a small way. In the following weeks, David continued to think about ways to help children in need. He spoke with friends, neighbors, and colleagues, encouraging small acts of compassion. He realized that the story of the twins was not just about two children in a diner. It was about the importance of noticing those around us, of taking action, and of remembering that empathy and care could create change. And while he could not control the world or solve every problem, David felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The small encounter with two little girls on a rainy evening had reminded him of something essential, that human connection, kindness, and care could illuminate even the darkest days. A few days after the first encounter at the diner, David couldn't stop thinking about the little twin girls. He wondered how they were doing, if they had eaten properly, or if they felt safe. Even though he had contacted the child support organization, he felt there was more he could do to help. He wanted to do more than just make a phone call. He wanted to be part of their lives, even in a small way, to make sure they knew someone cared about them. That afternoon, David found himself walking toward the diner again. The city streets were bustling with people rushing to finish errands or get home before evening, but David's focus was elsewhere. He kept thinking about the girls, wondering if they would appear, if they would recognize him, if they needed someone to talk to. When he reached the diner, he paused for a moment, letting the warmth of the interior reach him. The smell of fresh bread, coffee, and sizzling food filled the air, comforting him. As he entered, he noticed the familiar corner table, the same place where the girls had sat days before. He hoped they would come back, but a quick glance around the diner showed no sign of them yet. He ordered a cup of coffee and sat down, keeping an eye on the entrance. Time passed slowly, and his mind wandered back to the first meeting. He remembered how hesitant the girls had been, holding each other's hands tightly, and how their small voices had asked him for something as simple yet powerful as a meal. Then, just as he was beginning to wonder if they would appear at all, he saw them. The twin girls entered the diner, their small hands clasped together, just like before. They hesitated for a moment at the door, scanning the room, and then their eyes met David's. Recognition and relief passed over their faces. They smiled shyly, and David felt a warmth in his chest that he couldn't describe. He waved gently, and the girls slowly made their way to his table. "Hello again," David said softly, keeping his voice calm and welcoming. "I'm glad to see you." One of the twins, the one with the small bow in her hair, looked at him nervously. We didn't know if we could come back," she whispered. David shook his head with a gentle smile. "You're welcome anytime," he reassured them. No one should ever feel afraid to eat when they're hungry. The girls climbed onto the seats, their small hands folded in their laps. David signaled the waiter and ordered the same warm meal for them: chicken noodle soup, fresh bread, and hot cocoa. As he waited, he began talking to them quietly, asking about their day, school, and what they liked to do. At first, their answers were brief, hesitant, and careful, but as David smiled and spoke gently, the girls slowly began to open up. They talked about their favorite colors, their love for drawing and stories, and how they enjoyed simple games with each other. David listened attentively, occasionally making a soft joke to make them laugh. He realized that for these girls, this small interaction meant more than just a meal. They were sharing their world with someone who cared, someone who would listen without judgment. When the food arrived, the girls' eyes lit up. They began eating quickly but politely, savoring every bite. David watched them with a mixture of relief and admiration. He remembered the loneliness he had seen in their eyes the first night, and felt grateful that he could offer even a small sense of comfort. As they ate, the conversation grew more natural. David asked if they had any favorite books or stories. The girls shyly shared their love for fairy tales and adventure stories. They spoke about their dreams. One wanted to be a teacher, the other a doctor, and David listened with genuine interest, encouraging them to believe in themselves and follow their dreams. He realized that these small moments of encouragement could mean the world to children who didn't always hear kind words or feel supported. The twins asked questions too, their curiosity shining through. They asked David about his children, his job, and even about his own childhood. David answered honestly, but in a way that was easy for them to understand. He shared simple stories of his own family, making sure to include lessons about kindness, patience, and courage. The girls listened intently, clearly enjoying the attention and feeling important in a way they might not always feel at home. After the meal, David suggested a small activity. He pulled out a small notebook and colored pencils from his bag, something he had brought for his own children but thought the girls might enjoy. He handed it to them and said, "Why don't you draw something you like? Anything at all?" Their faces lit up with excitement. The girls began drawing quickly, each one absorbed in her own creation. David watched as they carefully colored, occasionally glancing at each other's work and giggling softly. For a few hours, the outside world with its hardships and challenges seemed to fade away. The diner became a safe, joyful space, filled with laughter, color, and shared stories. David realized that these moments were more than just a distraction. They were building trust and connection. The girls were learning that not everyone in the world was indifferent or unkind. that there were people who could be relied upon to listen, care, and help. And David felt the same, that he was capable of making a positive difference, even in small ways, in the lives of children who needed it. As the afternoon turned into evening, David offered a few gentle reminders. "You should always try to tell someone if you're hungry, cold, or scared," he said kindly. "There are people who will help, and you deserve to feel safe." The girls nodded, their eyes serious, showing that they understood. He also told them that it was okay to ask for help, and that asking didn't make anyone weak or bad, it made them brave. Before leaving, David packed up their drawings carefully. "These are wonderful," he said, smiling. "I want you to keep them and remember that you are special and talented." The girls beamed with pride, holding their small creations close. "Thank you," they said softly, a mix of gratitude and happiness in their voices. Walking home that evening, David felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He thought about his own children, who would ask about the girls when he told them about the afternoon. He realized that by sharing his time, kindness, and attention, he had created a moment that would likely stay with the twins for a long time. And he understood that even small acts of care, like sharing a meal, listening, or encouraging a child's creativity, could have a powerful impact. The next few weeks followed a similar pattern. David continued to meet the girls at the diner, each time building more trust, learning more about their lives, and offering comfort. They shared meals, talked about their dreams, drew pictures, and occasionally laughed at simple jokes. David noticed subtle changes in them. They seemed more confident, more comfortable, and less fearful. The tiny spark of hope he had seen in their eyes during their first meeting now seemed brighter and more alive. One day the girls brought small gifts for him, 2 little paper hearts, carefully folded and colored. "For you," they said shyly. David accepted them with a smile, touched by the gesture. "Thank you," he said. "I'll keep these and remember our time together." In that moment, David realized that kindness didn't only flow in one direction. The girls had given him something equally valuable: trust, affection, and the joy of making a difference in someone's life. David also noticed that this experience was changing him as a father. He was more patient and attentive with Emma and Lucas, appreciating the little moments they shared. He found himself sharing lessons about empathy and care, inspired by the time he spent with the twins. His children, in turn, began to understand that not everyone was as fortunate as they were, and that small acts of kindness mattered more than they had realized. Through these encounters, David began to understand a larger truth: that life was filled with moments of need, moments where someone could step in and make a difference. The world could be challenging, but compassion and attention could create safety, hope, and joy. And in seeing the twins grow a little more confident, smile a little more freely, and share their thoughts openly, he felt that he had contributed to something meaningful. The bond they were forming was not just about food or fun, it was about human connection, trust, and care. David realized that these experiences were teaching him lessons as much as they were helping the girls. That afternoon at the diner had grown into a relationship built on respect, love, and understanding. And for the first time in a long while, he felt a deep sense of purpose and hope, not just for the girls, but for the small ways in which kindness could ripple out into the world. As the sun set on another busy day, David walked home, thinking about the future. He didn't know what challenges the twins would face or where life would take them, but he knew that he would continue to be a part of their story as long as he could. And he understood that the power of small, consistent acts of care, like sharing a meal, listening, or offering encouragement, could grow into something much larger than anyone could imagine. Days turned into weeks, and David's connection with the twin girls grew stronger. What had started as a chance encounter at a diner had transformed into something far deeper than he could have imagined. Each meeting, Each conversation and each shared meal became a small but powerful thread weaving trust and hope between them. But David knew that what they really needed went beyond just food and warmth. They needed safety, guidance, and a stable environment to grow in. He realized that while he had brought some comfort into their lives, it was time to take further steps. One quiet Saturday morning, David sat at his kitchen table, sipping coffee and thinking about the twins. He considered what he could do to make a more lasting difference in their lives. Calling social services had been the first step, but he wanted to do more. He wanted to ensure that the girls had a safe place to live, an education they could rely on, and a sense of belonging. He thought about all the children who didn't have even one caring adult in their lives and felt a strong urge to act. After some thought, David decided to contact a few local organizations that focused on child welfare. He made phone calls, wrote emails, and explained the situation carefully. He shared what he knew about the twins, their age, their habits, and the circumstances he had observed. Every person he spoke to was kind and attentive, assuring him that the girls would be monitored, given proper care, and supported. David felt a small wave of relief, knowing that there were systems in place to help. Yet, he knew that bureaucracy could only do so much. Personal care and attention mattered just as much, if not more. That afternoon, David returned to the diner to meet the girls, bringing along some school supplies, small notebooks, pencils, crayons, and a few storybooks. When the girls arrived, their eyes lit up at the sight of the gifts. "For us?" one of them asked, her voice barely above a whisper. David nodded and smiled warmly. "Yes, for both of you. I thought these could help with school and also for drawing or writing stories." The girls carefully examined each item, their faces lighting up with excitement. They thanked David repeatedly, though their voices remained soft. As they settled at the table, David could see the trust and comfort they had developed over the past weeks. They shared small stories about their days, about school lessons, and even about small adventures in their neighborhood. David listened intently, occasionally asking gentle questions to encourage them to talk more. During their conversation, David realized that the twins were not only lacking material resources, but they were also in need of emotional support. They had experienced moments of fear, uncertainty, and instability that no child should ever face. Their laughter, though genuine, sometimes masked nervousness or concern about what awaited them at home. David felt a deep responsibility to help them build confidence and resilience. He began gently teaching them coping skills, ways to express their feelings, and the importance of trusting safe adults. One day, David decided to take them to a small park near the diner. The park had swings, slides, and a quiet grassy area where children could play freely. He thought a change of environment would give them a sense of freedom and normal childhood joy. The girls' faces lit up as they ran toward the swings, their laughter ringing clearly through the air. For a few hours, they played without worry, shared secrets, and invented games that brought out their creativity. David joined in the fun, pushing them on the swings, racing them to the slides, and listening to their imaginative stories. Seeing the girls so happy filled David with a profound sense of purpose. He realized that childhood should be a time of wonder, not fear, and that even small moments of play could help heal past wounds. He encouraged them to explore, to be curious, and to share their thoughts without hesitation. And in those moments, he noticed subtle changes in them, more smiles, easier laughter, and a growing sense of security. After returning from the park, David sat with the girls at the diner again, giving them warm meals and listening to their dreams. They spoke about what they wanted to be when they grew up, about schools they wished to attend, and about small hobbies they hoped to pursue. David encouraged their ambitions, telling them that with determination, kindness, and support, they could achieve anything they set their minds to. He explained that asking for help or guidance did not make them weak. It made them strong and courageous. Over time, David's efforts began to extend beyond the twins alone. He started reaching out to other families in the neighborhood, offering small acts of support where he could. Sometimes it was helping a parent carry groceries. Sometimes it was tutoring a child struggling with homework. But the story of the twins remained closest to his heart. He felt a deep connection with them, a sense that their trust was not to be taken lightly. One afternoon, David received a phone call from the child support organization. They informed him that the twins' temporary guardian situation was unstable and that they were being moved to a safe and stable foster home while long-term plans were considered. The news was bittersweet. He was relieved that the girls would be safe, but he also felt the pang of realizing that his regular visits would become more complicated. He knew, however, that the most important thing was their well-being. Determined to maintain a connection, David made arrangements with the organization. He would be allowed supervised visits, and the girls could write letters or drawings to him when they wanted. David was grateful for this opportunity and immediately shared the news with the girls. Their faces showed a mixture of sadness and hope. "Will we still see you?" one asked, her voice trembling slightly. David nodded firmly. "Yes, I'll always be here when you need me. You're important to me, and I care about you very much." As weeks turned into months, David continued to play a role in the twins' lives. He visited them regularly, bringing small treats, books, and encouragement. They shared stories of their new school, their teachers, and the friends they were making. David noticed that they were becoming more confident, more open, and more joyful. The stability of the foster home, combined with his continued support, gave them a sense of belonging and safety they had never fully experienced before. Through this process, David realized something profound. Helping these children was not a one-time act. It was an ongoing journey of care, patience, and attention. Every visit, every shared meal, every conversation mattered. He saw firsthand that children could heal, grow, and thrive when given consistent love and support. The bond he had formed with the twins had become a source of hope, not just for them, but for himself. David also began sharing his experiences with others, quietly encouraging friends, neighbors, and colleagues to notice children who might need support. He explained that even small acts of kindness, a warm meal, a listening ear, or a bit of time, could create meaningful change. Slowly, he realized that what had begun as a personal mission was becoming something bigger, a ripple of compassion spreading through his community. One evening, after a particularly joyful visit with the girls, David reflected on how far they had come. He thought about their first timid steps into the diner, their shy voices asking for a simple meal, and how much courage it had taken them to trust a stranger. And now, months later, they laughed freely, shared stories without hesitation, and showed a resilience that inspired him deeply. He understood that while life could be challenging and unfair, hope, kindness, and consistent care could create lasting impact. David knew that there would still be challenges ahead. Life for the twins would not always be easy, and the path to stability might have bumps along the way. But he also knew that with trust, guidance, and support, they could navigate those challenges successfully. He had learned that helping a child was not just about meeting immediate needs. It was about building confidence, teaching resilience, and showing that the world could be a place of care and possibility. As he walked home that night, the city lights reflecting on wet streets, David felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. He thought about his own children, about the lessons he could teach them through his actions, and about the importance of noticing those who needed support. He realized that the small steps he had taken with the twin girls, sharing a meal, listening to their stories, and spending time with them, had grown into something meaningful. They had become part of each other's lives in a way that would leave lasting impressions. And in the quiet moments, when the world seemed overwhelming, David remembered a simple truth. Even one person's kindness could create ripples of change. The twin girls had entered his life unexpectedly, their shy voices asking a question that would shape his actions, his heart, and his understanding of what it meant to truly care for another human being. Time passed, and David watched the twin girls grow stronger, more confident, and happier with each visit. The little diner meetings, the shared meals, and the afternoons of drawing and laughter had created a bond that went far beyond simple friendship. The girls were no longer the timid, hesitant children who had first asked, "Can we eat with you?" They had become vibrant, joyful, and full of curiosity about the world. Their small voices were now confident, their smiles wide, and their laughter frequent. And David felt a deep sense of pride and hope, knowing that his care had played a part in this transformation. The foster home where the twins now lived was safe and supportive. Their new guardian was kind, patient, and attentive, making sure they had everything they needed: warm meals, a comfortable room, a school routine, and a safe environment where they could feel secure. David continued to visit regularly, bringing books, school supplies, and small treats, but more importantly, he brought encouragement, stories, and his time. The girls looked forward to these visits, counting the days until they could sit across from him again, share their experiences, and laugh together. One sunny afternoon, David took the girls to a nearby park. The park had wide green lawns, tall trees, and a playground with swings, slides, and climbing structures. The girls ran ahead, their giggles echoing across the grass, while David followed at a slower pace, enjoying the sight of their energy and joy. As they played, he noticed how much more confident they had become. They explored boldly, tried new activities, and even helped each other when one of them felt unsure. Their bond with each other was as strong as ever, and now it was complemented by the trust and love they had for David. Sitting on a bench, David watched them play and spoke gently. "I am so proud of both of you," he said. "You've been through a lot, but look at how strong and brave you are. You can do anything if you keep believing in yourselves." The girls paused for a moment, looking at him seriously, and then smiled. "We feel safe now," one said softly. "Because of you." David's heart swelled. These simple words meant more to him than anything else. They showed that his consistent care, attention, and kindness had made a real difference in their lives. Over time, the twins started excelling in school. They studied hard, asked questions, and enjoyed learning new things. David made a habit of reviewing their homework with them during his visits, helping them understand difficult concepts and encouraging them to think creatively. He also brought books and stories that sparked their imagination, teaching them about courage, kindness, and the power of perseverance. He noticed how quickly they absorbed these lessons, and it reminded him of the impact that guidance and support could have when paired with trust and attention. David also shared life lessons gently. He spoke about honesty, respect, and empathy. He taught them that it was okay to ask for help, that mistakes were part of learning, and that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act even when afraid. The girls listened carefully, often nodding, their young minds absorbing the wisdom he offered. Over time, these lessons shaped not only their behavior but also their confidence. They began to speak up in class, share their ideas with peers, and even help other children who seemed shy or unsure. David realized that kindness and guidance, when given consistently, had a ripple effect that could extend far beyond the immediate moment. As the girls grew more independent, David saw them developing dreams for their future. One day, while sitting at the diner, they told him about their ambitions. One twin wanted to become a teacher, inspired by her love of learning and her desire to help other children. The other dreamed of becoming a doctor, wanting to care for people and make a difference in the world. David listened with admiration, praising their goals and explaining that with dedication, hard work, and the support of those who cared, they could achieve anything. David's own children, Emma and Lucas, also witnessed the positive changes in the twins. They saw how the girls had become more confident and happy, and they learned valuable lessons in empathy and compassion. David encouraged his children to be kind, patient, and helpful to others, explaining that small acts of care could change someone's life. Emma and Lucas began sharing their toys, helping neighbors, and showing consideration for classmates, inspired by what they had seen in the twins' growth. David realized that the experience had not only changed the twins' lives, but had also shaped his own children in meaningful ways. The relationship between David and the twins remained strong. They shared holidays together, small celebrations, and special outings. Each visit reinforced the sense of stability, safety, and trust that had become the foundation of their bond. The girls began to see David not just as a friend, but as a mentor and a reliable presence in their lives, a constant source of support amidst the uncertainties of childhood. One day, as they were leaving the diner, the twins handed David a small handmade card. Inside were drawings of hearts, flowers, and stick figures representing their little family of 3, the twins and David. "Thank you for everything," one of them said. "We will never forget you." David felt tears prick his eyes. He hugged them gently, whispering, "I will never forget you either. You are brave, special, and loved, and I am so proud of you both." David also began thinking more broadly about helping children in need. Inspired by his experiences with the twins, he started volunteering at local community centers and schools, helping children with homework, sharing stories, and offering mentorship. He realized that there were countless children who could benefit from small acts of care, guidance, and attention. Each smile, each story shared, and each lesson taught could make a meaningful difference, just like it had with the twins. Through it all, David learned valuable lessons about resilience, hope, and the power of kindness. The journey with the twins had taught him that life could be unpredictable, challenging, and sometimes unfair, but that consistent love, care, and attention could create stability and joy even in difficult circumstances. The girls had shown remarkable courage and strength, and David had learned that supporting a child went beyond providing material needs. It meant offering emotional guidance, encouragement, and unwavering attention. Years passed, and the twins grew into confident, intelligent, and compassionate young girls. They excelled in school, pursued their dreams, and developed a sense of empathy for others who faced challenges. David continued to be a part of their lives, offering guidance, encouragement, and support whenever needed. The bond that had begun with a simple question, "Can we eat with you?" had grown into a lifelong connection built on trust, care, and shared experiences. David often reflected on that rainy evening at the diner, the moment that had changed everything. He realized that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could have the largest impact. By listening, caring, and taking action, he had helped 2 young girls find hope, confidence, and stability. In turn, they had taught him about resilience, courage, and the profound difference one person could make in the life of another. And so, what began as a simple gesture of sharing a meal had blossomed into something far greater, a story of human connection, hope, and lasting change. The twins had flourished, David's children had learned the value of compassion, and David himself had grown as a father, mentor, and human being. Together, they had discovered the truth that even in a world full of challenges, love, kindness, and care could create light, hope, and endless possibilities. David often walked through the city, remembering that first night, feeling the warmth of the diner and smiling at the thought of the girls, small hands reaching for his. He knew that life would always have its struggles, but he also knew that the power of one person to care could ripple outward, touching lives in ways that could never be measured. And in the hearts of the twins, David knew there would always be a place for him, a reminder that hope, love, and kindness were never wasted, and that even the smallest gestures could change the world. Looking back, David understood the profound truth of his journey. The world could be harsh, uncertain, and sometimes lonely, but one act of compassion could create ripples that would touch not just one life, but many. The twins' laughter, their dreams, and their bright eyes were living proof that love and care could triumph over fear, uncertainty, and hardship. And as they grew, they carried with them the lessons, support, and kindness that had been offered so freely, ready to create hope for others in the same way that David had once done for them.